In the beginning of the story, we see our main character Tamiya, who was a high school teenager, was chilling in his secret hangout spot, the literature club of their school. The club had not done any activities, and the reason was that he was the only member in it. It was his ultimate private space. He was reading his comics there, and then suddenly the door opens and a girl in tight tracksuit enters in. She quickly rushes at him and jumps over Tamiya. Tamiya gets super uncomfortable when she leans onto him in such exposing outfit. She quickly hides behind him, and then a few seconds later, their female team captain comes there as well, searching for her. The girl tells Tamiya to keep quiet. Tamiya tells the teacher that he did not see any girl, so the teacher leaves. The tournament was just around the corner and the girl was running away from it. Then she gets up and thanks Tamiya for his help. She tells him that she hates the track and field club. As per her, it was very outdated sport. Then she sees that he had the latest comic collections. She picks one and asks Tamiya if she can read them. Tamiya gives the permission. She sits there and starts reading. Tamiya actually had some idea about who she was. She was Natsuki Shiho, the track and field ace of their school. She was very popular among the boys, especially with those in the same grade as her. Unlike Tamiya, who only sits in the back of the class and chats with his nerdy mates, she was much more extroverted. They both had no history of interaction before, as they were in separate classes. In fact, it was the first time Tamiya was looking at her so up close. She was wearing her normal gym uniform, but for some reason, he was feeling very wrong to him. Then Natsuki asks him if it was the literature club, and if he was alone there. Tamiya replies that it was indeed the literature club, and that it was his very own place to chill. She laughs and tells him that it feels like his secret hideout and asks him if he feels peace there. Then she tells him that she was happy to find a good slacking spot for her. That triggers Tamiya, and he immediately asks her if she meant that she was going to come there in the future. Natsuki replies that she was indeed planning to do that. Tamiya was not happy to hear that, and wanted to tell her badly that she cannot intrude into his holy land and pollute it. But he resists the temptation and does not react. Then Natsuki tells him that he must be in a tight spot since hearing that out of the blue. She asks him if he was bothered by getting interrupted by someone who stinks of sweat. She apologizes to him for being so smelly. Tamiya tells her that he never said anything like that. She keeps talking and promises him that he will not show her face again to him. Tamiya was feeling really guilty to hear that and tells her that it was okay for her to come there. Natsuki was really happy to hear that, and Tamiya realizes that he accidentally gave her the access to visit his personal space anytime she wants to. She then asks him his name and they both introduces each other. Then she tells him goodbye and promises that she will return again the next day. With that, she leaves that room. Tamiya was stressed out to hear that she will come back again the very next day, but still he tries to be optimistic and tells himself that he will somehow chase her away from his holy ground. Then to his fear, she actually shows up again the next day. He was thinking of some way to chase her away, but could not figure out anything special. She sits near him and asks him what he was doing. He replies that he was studying as the exams were coming. He was making a very gloomy and rude face. She tells him that she was not good at maths while he was solving some math problems. Tamiya knew that if he gets distracted and not concentrate, then he will be in big trouble. He tells her that thinking that she will feel guilty and leave him alone to study. But then suddenly she gets even closer to him and asks him if she should teach him. Tamiya knew that his method backfired on him. She assures him that he was actually great at maths, despite of her looks. Tamiya tells him that he does not want to trouble her unnecessary. She replies that she does not mind it, but Tamiya actually minded it. He tells her that he was actually fine, that he was not that bad at maths. Then she just lays down there and falls asleep. Tamiya was shocked to see that she dared to spread her armpits that wide and lay down, even though he was in the same airspace as her. He sees that she was now completely relaxed with him and was sleeping. He decides to simply ignore her and work on his own job, but then he was getting distracted by her armpits. He was staring at them. He gets hold of himself and then starts studying again. His red pen was out of ink. He remembers that he had an extra one in his bag, but his bag was right beside Natsuki. He first wonders if he should wait and do it later, and then realizes that it was his own room, so he has no need to be polite there. Natsuki was the one who intruded in his space and was even sleeping there, so he decides to retrieve his bag from her side. He extends his one hand to grab the bag, but then his other hand slips and he falls on top of her huge melons. He freaks out and then Natsuki gets awake. She suddenly realizes it and gets up fast. Tamiya explained to her that he was trying to get his bag but slipped. Natsuki tells him that she needs to return to her club and runs out of there. Tamei was glad that she did not misunderstood him, but in reality, Natsuki did took it the wrong way. She was now stressed as he was trying to do things on her chest while she was sleeping. Even after a whole day, Tamiya had still the sensation of touching her melons in his palm. It was really soft and big. He was thinking about all that, and then all of a sudden, Natsuki shows up and surprises him. He asks her, when did she get there? She replies that she just entered in and asks him what he was thinking about. He replies that it was nothing much. Then Natsuki asks him if she can ask him for a favor. Tamiya nervously asks her what it was. She asks him if she can borrow his fridge. Tamiya asks her why she needed. She replies that it was to cool her drinks as outside it will drop down to room temperature, so it would be convenient if she can cool it there. Tamiya was tired of her. He thinks of her as shameless as she was now trying to take over his fridge as well, but he was this time determined to not let her take advantage of him and was going to deny it. But then she tells him that she was not going to take it for free. She tells him to ask her for anything that she can give him. After hearing that, Tamiya's eyes first falls on her melons again automatically. She asks him if he wants to fondle them and even gives him the permission for it. Tamiya loses control on himself and advances to fondle her chest, but then he realizes that he was acting cheaply by doing that for just a fridge and tells her to use the fridge whenever she wants for free. She was very happy to hear that and thanks him and leaves again. Tamiya was tired of her for real now. He tries to convince himself that those big melons were nothing but just body fat. He manages to think that it was not a big deal and calm down. He was again in the literature club, and then Natsuki gets back after getting fully exhausted in the tracks. She goes to open the fridge to get her drink, but then she sees that there were two same drinks inside the fridge and calls Tamiya, who was hardly awake, to ask which one was hers. Tamiya, upon realizing that he also earlier brought the same drink, gets stressed again. He just bought what he wanted and stuffed it in without a second thought. He wonders if Natsuki will think of him as a pervert who bought the same drink purposefully. He was worried about how much she drank already and at what position he exactly kept his one. Both the drinks were in her hands. He thinks that he should buy a new drink to her to compensate for the confusion. But before he could say anything, Natsuki opens a bottle and starts drinking. Tamiya was just stunned to see that. She tells him that the content of the bottles were same, so it does not matter which one was whose. Tamiya was amazed to see that she was completely fine with it. Then after some brief awkward silence, Tamiya asks her if she would like to sit on his couch. She was sitting on the floor, so he invites her to sit comfortably in his couch. But Natsuki tells him that she was fine down there. Now he starts wondering why he was starting to be considerate with her even though she was her target. He needed to get her out of his room, but still somehow, being alone in a room together with her when he was the only one sitting on a sofa made him feel bad. He then thinks that if he will leave the sofa unoccupied, then she might sit on it. It might be unsatisfactory for him personally, but it could ease his mind. He gets up and sits on the floor. Natsuki, instead of sitting on the sofa, sits beside him. He was shocked to see that and was even more freaked out to see her huge melons again and very tight top. Then he finally asks her if she would use the sofa. Natsuki replies kindly that she was fine there on the ground and asks him to sit there rather. Tamiya wonders what might be the reason for her strange act. Then it strikes his mind that the sofa might be stinking as he has been using it for a very long period of time, but never cleaned it. He immediately grabs a spray freshener and cleans the sofa right in front of her. Looking at that, Natsuki wonders if she was smelling so badly. Then Tamiya tells her that he thought she was not sitting on the sofa because it stinks. She replies that the sofa was not stinky. Tamiya was confused. The next day, when she comes in, she sees that Tamiya had prepared a cushion for her to sit. He tells her to use it and that it was newly bought, so it would be clean. Natsuki was impressed to see that he did it for her and offers him money for it, but he refuses and tells her to accept it as a present. He tells her to not get bothered by it as it was very affordable, but then she grabs his hand and thanks him. Tamiya blushes and tells her again that it was all right. Tamiya hopes that she was sitting more comfortable now, but he was also realizing that it was becoming more and more difficult to chase her out. He wonders if his thoughts and actions were contradicting themselves. At this point, he was not sure what he was doing. Then he sees how happy she was there and gets even more sympathetic for her. Then later at the classroom, Tamiya's two nerd friends, Oak and Ushima, asks him why he was spacing out in the middle of everyone. Oak tells him that he was looking like a maiden in love. Tamiya tells him that he was not in love. Then his another friend, Sonoya, a short girl, appears and tells them that they were on duty that day. They needed to help in preparing for the next class. Then she asks them what they were talking about. Oak tells her that it was about Tamiya being in love. Tamiya tells them again that he was not in love. Then he tells them to come to the teacher's lounge with him. Then secretly on their way, Sonoya asks him who was the girl he was in love with. Tomoya tells the same thing to her, that he was not in love and that Oka and Oshima were now annoying him. But then suddenly he sees Natsuki walking with her friends. He hides his face and quickly passes by her. Sonoya was watching all that and asks him if he loved Natsuki. Tomoya freaks out to hear that, which makes it clear for her that it was the case. Then she explains him that Natsuki was way out of his league, that their worlds were completely different, and in fact he might be playing on a different server. Then he tells her that she got it all wrong and she should not assume such stuff. He tells her that Natsuki had been frequently coming to his club room, and he wrecks his brain to come up with countermeasure ideas to get her out of there. Sonoya still does not believe him and calls him even delusional, that he cannot tell the difference between delusion and reality anymore. Tamiya tells her that it was all real, but she refuses to believe it and tells him to make sure his condition does not get worse and he does not become a stalker. Then, later when Natsuki comes to the club room, she asks him if he saw her when they passed each other at the hallway. Tamiya acts like he did not see her, but Tamiya happily tells him that she saw him, but she was not sure she should call him out there among his friends. Tamiya was glad that she did not do it. Then, very nervously, Natsuki asks him if the girl who was with him back there was his girlfriend. She tells him that if that was the case, then she should not come to the club room always. Then Tamiya replies that she was just a classmate, more like his gaming partner. He tells her that there was no way in hell that any girl would even consider him to be her boyfriend. Then he feels like he said that unnecessarily. Then Natsuki asks him if Shay can call out him any time, even if they were not in the club room. Tamiya wanted to hesitate, but before that she just tells him that he can do the same to her. She leans down at him and asks him to do it. Her huge melons were right in front of his face. He blushes and tells her that he understands. Then he wonders if he got heavily intimidated by her. He looks at her and realizes that she was looking even bigger up close. Then the next day, Tamiya was there in the club room having a hot cup of coffee on a day off to just get a notebook. It was the first time he was doing it, and was very happy. He looks out of the window towards the field and he sees that Natsuki was there training in the tracks. He was shocked to see that they were practicing even in a day off. He thinks that he can never do that. It was two completely different worlds for him and her. Then all of a sudden the P team shouts from the field that starts shouting and asks everyone, where did Natsuki go? She had just sneaked out again. Tamiya wonders, where would she go on a day off like that? And then he freaks out when she surprises him from behind. Then he asks her, what was she doing there? She tells him that when she was running, she saw his shadow from the window. Tamiya realizes that he was being careless and made a huge mistake by peeking out of the window so casually. Then she asks him if he regularly comes to the club room, even on day offs. He replies and tells her that he does not, and it was just a coincidence. He asks her if she was having a hard time on her day off. She replies that she does not understand why she needed to sweat off so much so early in the morning. She takes out a body sheet from the tissue box and starts wiping out herself in front of him. Tamiya wanted to tell her to stop doing that in the open. It was something to be done in the locker room, yet she was comfortable doing it in front of him. She was not doing anything naughty for sure, but wonders if she does not see him as a man and thinks of him as some harmless little bug. Then when she throws the sheet into the trash can, he was looking at it. She asks him what was he doing. He again freaks out and tells her that he was not doing anything and was just looking at the trash can. It was a close call for him to be recognized as a pervert. Then he asks her if she would like a cup of coffee. Natsuki asks him if she can really get one. Tamiya goes to pour another cup of coffee for her. He wanted her to go away, but for some reasons he was doing all that for her. Then while drinking the coffee, she suddenly asks him to give her his contact number. Tamiya was shocked to hear that. She tells him that they know each other for quite some time now, so they should have each other's contact information. So he brings out his phone, but then she tells him that they will do it later, as she does not have her phone at the moment. Then she leaves saying him that she will finish at 12 o'clock and will meet him at the gate after that. Tamiya was not so pleased to know that he will have to wait there for 2 more hours. Then, after some time, she actually meets him near the gate. She gives him her social media handle and they connect there. She texts him in it about which way was his home. He replies that he will take the train anyway. The strong smell of sweat and youth was coming out of her body. Tamiya was very awkward around her. The next day, also Natsuki invades his territory, but now Tamiya was getting more used to her being around. Then she comes to him and asks him if he has the next volume of the manga she was reading. Tamiya immediately gets up and gives her the manga she was looking for. He realizes that he was still very formal around her. He needed to keep his cool around her. He wanted to build his resistance level, even if he will have to force himself. Then he starts staring at her consistently. She asks him why he was looking at her like that. He replies that it was nothing and keeps staring at her. The idea was to get used to see her, so he does not freak out anymore. Natsuki was feeling awkward, and then she gets up all of a sudden and comes close to him and tells him that if he wants to look at her so badly, then he should do it from close range. She sticks her ripped belly to his face. Tamiya loses his sense after that. When he wakes up, Natsuki was still there. He realizes that now she was starting to get into his head. She asks him what kind of dream he saw, but then she tells him to not tell her and leaves the room, saying that it was time to get back to her club. Tamiya wonders why she looks flustered like that. Then he sees his pant and realizes the reason. He had a boner. They both were trying to convince themselves that it was just a normal physiological phenomenon. After the school time, he decides to go to a manga shop to look for any interesting manga. His eyes falls on a manga that was about track and field maidens. The poster girl had huge melons. Tamiya was tired to picking manga like that, just looking at such erotic cover art. He believes that there were no girls who could do track and field and have such huge breasts at the same time. It was not possible to run with them hanging like that. Even though it was just fiction, he believes that the author messed up and did not consider the reality. But still he decides to buy it and check how it was. He goes to the counter and tells the counter girl that he wants to buy it. When he takes a look at her, it was none other than Sonoya. She tells him that it was an interesting choice by him. He was shocked to see her and asks her if she was working there part-time. Sonoya replies that it had been a week. Then he tells her that it was a misunderstanding and asks to give the manga back, but Sonoya does not. He gives an excuse that he actually wanted to buy One Piece manga instead. Bei had no idea when it swapped. She does not believe him and asks him if it was because he was always thinking about it in his head. She scans the price code of the manga and assures him that she would not laugh at his preference. She asks him if he was thinking about Natsuki while buying it. She calls him a good example of a virgin. Tamiya was pissed to hear that and calls for the manager to fire her immediately for messing with the customer. She tells him that the manager was not there. She tells him the price, and Tamiya pays it quickly and gets out of there. Looking at the manga cover, he tells himself that he did not pick up the manga thinking of Natsuki at all, that the character does not even look like Natsuki. And then suddenly Natsuki was standing right in front of him. Tamiya gets surprised and quickly hides the manga behind him. Natsuki tells him that she was going to a karaoke with a friend and asks him what he was doing there. Tamiya replies nervously that he just went to a bookstore. She asks him which book did he buy. He replies that it was nothing special, just a healthy book. He then tells him goodbye and leaves as soon as possible. Then her friend Fumin asks her if he was her friend. Natsuki replies that he was, that they met at the literature club. Fumin actually saw the manga cover he had. It was clearly the track and field maiden manga. She wonders why he was covering it up so vehement in front of Natsuki. She assumes that he was a freak trying to get close to Natsuki and decides to teach him a lesson. Natsuki asks her why she was having such a terrifying expression on her face. Then the next day, Natsuki arrives at the club room and sees that there were dartboard and darts on the wall. She asks Tamiya where did he get it. He replies that he was cleaning the room and found it, and was also playing with it a little. Then she asks him if he would like to have a battle with her. She proposes that they will do 3 rounds and the score will be added, and the loser will have a punishment, that he will have to do squats from the score difference. Tamiya sees himself in disadvantage there, but he had to agree for the battle. Then Natsuki goes first. She hits the target all 3 times and makes a score of 150 in total. It was a really nice score and was very hard to beat. Tamiya tells her that she was really good. She replies that it was just a coincidence. Then it was Tamiya's turn and he shockingly makes a total of 180. Natsuki asks him how did he do it? He just replies that it was a coincidence. She refuses to believe him. Tamiya tells her to fulfill the challenge by doing 30 squats now. Natsuki accepts her defeat and starts doing squats. But looking at her, Tamiya gets uncomfortable. She was just doing squats, but it was looking very erotic to him. He feels like it was wrong. A very degenerate act was being performed in his sacred room. He tells her that she can stop if she wants, but she refuses and tells him that she will fulfill her promise and keeps doing it. Tamiya was not okay with it. Then later on, when Natsuki gets out of the club, her friend Fumen was keeping an eye on her. In the girls' changing room, she comes to Natsuki and asks her what she was doing in the literature club by sneaking out recently. Natsuki asks her if she saw her. Fumen replies that she saw her by mistake. Natsuki tells her that she has been doing various things inside, but they cannot let the club president know about it. Fumen promises her that she won't tell anyone. Fumen could only imagine what they had been doing inside. Tamiya was the only member in that club. That meant that he was alone with Natsuki the whole time. That means that something must have happened between them, she assumes. She imagines how Tamiya would have threatened her and blackmailed her for her photos and had made her wear bunny girl costume and abuse and molest her physically. Fumen wanted to be the one to save Natsuki. Then, the very next day, she calls Tamiya a bastard. Tamiya asks her if she means him. She replies that she does and mentions the track and field manga. Tamiya's expression changes all of a sudden. He was scared that he has been exposed now. He keeps acting and tells her that he knows about nothing like that. Fumen tells him to not play dumb as she clearly saw it in his hand. Tamiya recalls that she was with Natsuki when he had the manga in his hand. Fumen asks him if he was not satisfied with Natsuki alone, that now he wants other track and field girls as well. Tamiya asks her what she was talking about. Fumen shouts at him to delete the embarrassing photos he took of Natsuki. Fumen asks her if he won't do it for free and offers him that she will take the place of Natsuki instead. Tamiya understood at that point that she was the kind of girl who does not hear anyone else and just keeps yapping. Then Natsuki arrives at the spot and asks them what they were talking about. Fumen covers her from Tamiya and tells Natsuki to run away as she will wear the bunny costume and show her abs instead of her. The Natsuki tells her everything, that she was not forced to be in the literature club and that she was imagining a bit too much. She tells Fumen that she was just chilling in the literature club. Then Tamiya calls Fumen very rude for assuming people pervert without any clear evidence. He tells her that she was more of a pervert than he was. Fumen feels very bad and runs away from there with tears. Then with some nervousness, Natsuki asks Tamiya if he was actually interested in bunny suit with open belly. Then she tells him to forget about it and leaves as well. Then after calming down, Tamiya realizes that he was actually interested in it. He was very much interested in girls in bunny suit with open belly. Then after the school, at the club room, Natsuki was showing him the pics of her pet cat on her phone. Tamiya asks her what her cat's name was. She replies that she calls it Hokusai as it was a male cat. Tamiya agrees that the cat was very cute, but he was looking at the person holding the cat with huge melons. Her face was not visible, so he could not confirm that it was Natsuki for sure. He wanted to ask about the person, but he knew that it would be rude if he asks her about anything other than the cat. Then she shows him another cat with another faceless huge melons owner. Then Natsuki asks him if he had any pets. Tamiya replies that he has a dog at home. She asks him to show a pic of his dog. Tamiya was not sure if he had a pic of his dog on the phone, but still he looks for it, and finds one eventually. He shows it to her, and then she sees that the dog was alongside a beautiful woman. Natsuki asks Tamiya what was her name. Tamiya replies to her that it was called Saki. Natsuki tells him that it sounds like a dog name. Then he realizes what she was asking about. He tells her that the person holding the dog was his sister. Natsuki tells him that she was looking at her more than his dog. It was all a setup by Tamiya to ask about the girl in her pictures earlier. He played it perfectly. He asks her who was the girl holding her cat. Natsuki replies that she was her younger sister. Then very cautiously, Tamiya asks her what was the age difference between her and her sister. Natsuki tells him that she was 3 years older than her sister. She tells Tamiya that her sister was in the 2nd year of middle school. Tamiya was blown away after hearing that. He could not believe that a middle school 2nd year girl could have such humongous melons. Then Natsuki asks him if he wants to see what her sister looks like and shows him a picture of them together in swimsuit. When they visited Okinawa, her sister was beautiful, was a little shorter than Natsuki, but still had same-sized melons as her. Tamiya was just glad that he was living in the same country where these two beautiful sisters were living. Natsuki tells him that it was embarrassing when he was staring at the pictures like that. She assumes that maybe it was because of the swimsuit and then searches for a normal picture. While swiping, Tamiya sees a picture where Natsuki was splitting her legs and doing a one-leg balance with Fumen. He loses his mind after seeing it. Natsuki tells him that there was no normal picture of her and her sister, but Tamiya was already above the clouds after looking at what he saw. He did not need to see anything anymore. That day it was raining heavily while Tamiya was going home. He was caught up in the middle of rain and had no umbrella. He takes shelter in a place, and then Natsuki also shows up there. She also had no umbrella and was fully wet. Her melons were half visible as her shirt was wet, and while she was adjusting them, Tamiya was losing control again. His heart was beating very fast. Then she takes out towel from her bag and wipes her body. She looks at him how he was again staring at her, and asks him if he wants to use the towel as well. Tamiya refuses, but she still insists. Tamiya then thinks that it would be rude to always keep refusing her offers and takes the towel. He starts wiping his body, but then he smells the towel, and it was smelling just like her. He gets uncomfortable again and returns her the towel quickly. Natsuki asks him if he was done so fast. Then, while looking into her bag, she finds out that she actually had a small umbrella. She takes it out and tells Tamis that they can now go home using it. They both were going from the same station, so she calls him to get under the umbrella. But Tamiya was worried just thinking about being under the same umbrella with her. At last he tells her that he was good and will wait there until the rain stops. Natsuki then decides to go alone. Tamiya thanks her for letting him use her towel. Then after she had left, Sonoya comes and stands beside her with a creepy smile on her face. Tamiya asks her if she was there to mack him. Then the next day after school, Tamiya was relaxing in the club, and then Natsuki comes again and asks him what he was doing. Tamiya replies to her that he was watching a movie. She asks him what movie he was watching. He shows her and tells her that it was a zombie movie called The Last Thriller. Natsuki had never heard of it. Tamiya tells her that he also did not know about it, but just stumbled upon it while randomly browsing. Then she asks him if she can also join him. Tamiya agrees, and then she sits on the same sofa, very close to him. Tamiya was pissed to see how she did not know or care about keeping her distance. It was expected when he gave consent to watch a film on such a small screen like an iPad. He wonders if she even knows the meaning of what being reserved. Her was sure that girls like her were the reason why so many innocent boys loses their virginity. The movie was now being boring as well. He sees that even Natsuki was spacing out. He feels guilty for choosing such a boring movie. He was thinking of pausing the movie, but then decides to wait a bit more and see where it was going. Then a romantic scene comes in the movie, and it was an English film. So he knew that if the scene goes on, then the characters will kiss and make love, and make him feel very weird with Natsuki. Then the scene continues, and the love scene actually comes. Both him and Natsuki feels very weird looking at each other. Tamiya tells her that they should probably stop watching that movie. Natsuki also agrees. She tells him that she was not good with erotic scenes in movies. Then Natsuki asks him why they put that scene in that movie. That if it actually happens to people when they are alone together. Tamiya gets up and tells him that she was wrong, and that it was just a fan service scene for entertainment. Natsuki tells him that she knows that. They both were strongly against love scenes in movies. Then a few minutes later, a lady comes and tells Natsuki to clean the prep room. She tells him that it would be better if he does that as he has nothing else to do. Tamiya tells her that it was not true. The lady was actually the literary club advisor and commands him to do it at all costs and leaves. Tamiya was disappointed to hear that. There was dust everywhere in the prep room. Natsuki goes there with him. He tells her that there was no need for her to come too, but she insists to help him as she was with him the whole time. She tells him that it will be over if she helps him, and they can chill in the club room again. They both starts cleaning the prep room, and then all of a sudden a spider appears in front of Natsuki's face. The female team captain was in search of Natsuki as always. Then she suddenly hears a screaming sound. It was clearly Natsuki. Tamiya asks her what happened. She tells him that there was a spider in front of her face. Tamiya looks at it and tells her that it was very tiny. Then they hears the team captain's voice from outside, asking if Natsuki was in there. Natsuki tells Tamiya that she needs to hide before her captain comes in. They both hides inside a closet where there was very limited space. The captain comes in and checks if she was there, and after not finding her there, she leaves. Meanwhile, Tamiya was fighting an inner battle. His cucumber was touching Natsuki's peaches as he was right behind her. Then he asks her if there was any need for him to hide as well. Natsuki realizes that there was not and lets him go. Tamiya was trying his best to not get a boner or else his dignity will be over. Then the captain gets back and shouts her name loudly. Natsuki just scared and her butt squeezes on Tamiya's tools. Then the captain finally leaves. Natsuki opens the closet and gets out of there and apologizes to Tamiya for getting him involved in it. Tamiya was just glad to get out of there. Natsuki asks him if he was alright as he was staggering inside the closet. She asks him if he got hurt when she suddenly pushed him in. Tamiya tells her that he was totally fine. Then with a smile, she tells him that it was good to know that. Then she sees that he was leaning forward and asks him the reason. Tamiya was trying his best to save his dignity. His Drake was awake. The summer days were very hot. One day Tamiya was in the club room and was frustrated with the summer heat. It was just July and he was feeling so hot. Then Natsuki also gets in the same condition, but she was still out in the open training. She sits in front of the table fan and feels better. Tamiya was sleeping right behind her. The smell of her citrus body was flowing right into his nose through the air. She asks him if he was not being able to feel the fan as she was blocking him and decides to lie down as well. Tamiya looks at her armpits again, which was all sweaty. Tamiya was fascinated by them again. He keeps staring at her. Then she tells him that they should play rock, paper, scissors, and whoever wins will buy them ice cream. There was a vending machine at the canteen. Tamiya agrees and they start playing, and he wins it easily. He was glad that she was weak at that kind of games at least. Then she just up and goes to the canteen to buy him an ice cream. After she had left, Tamiya sees that there was a water droplet on the floor. He realizes soon that it was actually her armpit sweat she dropped there. Then he picks a tissue paper to clean it, as it might leave a stain. He wipes it and was staring at the tissue paper. Then all of a sudden, Natsuki comes there and tells him that she forgot her purse. So she asks him to lend her some money. Tamiya was trying to hide the tissue paper. He acts in a strange manner and goes to get the money. Natsuki finds that weird, but she was actually glad that he was so kind. Like that, she drops even more sweat on the ground. The next day, Tamiya was actually waiting for her to show up as it was almost time for her to appear. Then the doors opens and he was expecting to see her. But then Sonoya shows up and surprises him. He asks her what she needs from him. She replies to him with a poker face that she was there to just return the mange that she had borrowed from him. He tells her that she could have done it the next day. Senu reminds him that there was no school the next day. It was the first time she was coming to his club room, and she was amazed to see how the whole room was filled with his personal stuff. She decides to relax there for a while and sits on the cushion where Natsuki sits. He tells her that the cushion belongs to Natsuki. Senu asks him what does he mean. He explains it to her, that he bought the cushion, but he gave it to Natsuki. Sonoya asks him if Natsuki came in uninvited. Tamiya replies that she did. Sonoya asks him if he was still fooling himself with such delusion. Tamiya tells her that he was telling the truth. She calls him crazy for even buying a gift for his imaginary character. She adds this case to her mystery file. Tamiya gets pissed and tells her to wait there till Natsuki actually shows up. Sonoya laughs at him and tells him that he must have been really lonely, and promises him that she will accompany him. Tamiya was not happy to hear that and asks her to shut her mouth up and wait. An hour passes by and Natsuki does not show up. Tamiya was now worried as Natsuki always showed up before that time. He tells Sonoya how she would sit there and lie down to read manga or take a nap. Sonoya was really worried for him to see him like that. She finds him helpless and decides to go home. Tamiya asks her to wait just a little longer, but she tells him that she needs to go for her part-time job. She, before leaving, gives him an advice that he should visit the hospital at least once and do a checkup. She tells him to not take it the wrong way. Tamiya tells her that he was completely normal and asks her to wait a little longer. She tells him that she will always be his friend no matter what happens. Tamiya tells her to stop if she really was his friend, but she leaves. Tamiya was now having an existential crisis. He wonders if he was actually imagining Natsuki and all things that happened between them the whole time due to being so lonely all the time. Then Natsuki actually gets in and tells him sorry for being a little late. He puts his hands on her shoulders and asks her in confusion if she was real or he was dreaming. Then he realizes after touching her that she was real and asks her why she was late. She replies that she got caught by the captain and was forced to practice. She then asks him if he missed her so much that he was getting desperate to see her. He then shouts at her that he was tired of waiting for her that whole time. Natsuki was scared and also was blushing very hard. She tells him that next time she will try her very best to come as soon as possible. Tamiya begs her to do that. Then they start chilling normally like they do, and Tamiya opens his drawing book to draw something. Natsuki asks him if he was going to paint. Tamiya tells her that he was, as it was part of his art homework. His teacher told him that he can draw whatever he wants, but he could not think of anything. Then he wonders if she can draw and asks her if she can draw well for him. Natsuki tells him that she cannot draw as she took music lessons and not art lessons. Then she tells him that thinking about an idea to draw something while being locked inside a room won't help him and asks him to come outside with her. She shows them some flowers and asks him if he would like to draw them. Tamiya replies that flowers would be complicated and yet boring, that he cannot enjoy drawing them. He was looking for some high-class stuff to draw. Then Tamiya looks at Natsuki and thinks that she would actually be a perfect topic for him as she was so attractive and would impress any artist with her muscular body and yet cute face. She asks him what he was thinking. Tamiya tells her that he was wondering if she should become his art model. Natsuki asks him what he means by that, and he drops his idea in fear. She tells him that she does not mind being his art model, but she thinks that she would be a boring person to draw. Tamiya asks her if he can really draw her. He tells her that if she permits, then he would love to draw her. Natsuki gives him the green card, and then he starts drawing her. He was trying to calm himself down by thinking that he was just making an art. Then Natsuki asks him if she should pose and starts posing in various angles. Tami gets carried away and keeps staring at her. He punches himself to get out of it and tells her to just stand still. Then after some time, he finishes the sketch and tells her that he was done, and she was relaxed now. Then Natsuki asks him to show it to her. Tamiya shows her the sketch, and it turns out that he only drew her abdomen. She asks him why did he do that, and it replies that it was his limit for now. He was just way too embarrassed to draw her face or chest, as he would need to stare at them for a long period of time, which was hard for him. Natsuki tells him that if he shows such a joke of an art, then his teacher will rip him apart. Tamiya tells her that it was not joke of an art. Then later at the art room, his teacher was actually impressed to see how much effort he had put into drawing that. He tells him that he can feel his soul looking at that painting. In fact, he gives him the best painting award. Tamiya was shocked to see that. Then the teacher asks him if he can hang that art on the wall for a few weeks. Tamiya begs him to not do it. It was on display anyway in real life. The next day, Natsuki comes to the club room and removes her right socks. Tamiya asks her what happened to her. She tells Tamiya that she stepped in a puddle earlier, but it was good that the socks was drying quickly as they speak. Tamiya asks her if she has a spare one with her. She replies that she does have additional pair, but she forgot to bring them that day. Tamiya's eyes were fixated on her foot. He tells himself that it was noting with just the sole of the foot, but he could not stop. He realizes that there were not many opportunities to worship a lady's bare sole as they were covered by socks or something for most of the time. When he thinks like that, he feels something special about her sole. While she was moving her right bare foot, Tamiya immediately looks off as he was again awakening something dangerous again. He was wondering just how many more weapons she was concealing in her body. She was such a fetish machine creator. Then he sees that a small mosquito comes and sits on her naked toe, but she did not notice. He wanted to tell her that there was a mosquito on her toe, but realizes that he would be seen as a creep, as no one usually notices such small thing on someone's foot unless they are staring at them. He could not tell her directly, but he thinks of one other way. He opens his own socks and tells her that it feels itchy in between his toes. He wanted her to notice her toe like that, but instead of that, she just contacts her foot with his and tickles him. Tamiya was shocked to see that. She tells him that they have the same size of feet. The mosquito was gone and Tamiya's job was done. Then later on, Natsuki sees that Tamiya was looking very gloomy. She recognizes his behavior and asks him if something was bothering him again. He tells her that he was just not looking forward to the basketball tournament the next day. He was not good at basketball at all. He was okay with any other sport except basketball, but the selector selected him while he was sleeping without his consent. He was hoping to get in soccer, even though he was bad at it as well, but as there were many players in it, no one would have noticed him making a mistake. But since basketball team only had 5 players, so every mistake was amplified. She tells him that he should just practice it instead of complaining. She takes him to the basketball court and tells him that she will teach him some basic moves. They starts playing, and then Natsuki moves very fast and easily scores. Tamiya tells her that he cannot do that. Natsuki asks him why cannot he do it, as all he needed to do was to move very fast and dunk it. Tamiya realizes that she was a musclehead. He explains her that the difference between her body and his body was too much. He was not muscular and strong like her and cannot move that fast. Then she tells him that they will practice defense instead of shooting in that case. Then she teaches him to lower his center of gravity and watch his opponent closely. But again, her bouncy melons were distracting Tamiya, and by mistake he grabs her melons instead of the basketball. They both freaks out and he tells her that he did not mean it. Natsuki tells him that it was okay and tells him to concentrate again. But it was very hard for Tamiya to concentrate in front of her. Things were not progressing very smoothly. The next day, Natsuki was also playing in the girls' volleyball game. She was smashing the ball so hard that Sonoya, who was her opponent, feels like she was about to die if it hits her. Tamiya was also there looking at the game. Sonoya tells him that Natsuki was about to kill her. Then Natsuki sees him and asks him if he was watching the game to cheer for his class. He replies that he was actually watching the game to cheer her instead. Natsuki blushes and thanks him. Tamiya knew that No was going to beat her anyway to begin with. He tells her that she was good at volleyball as well, but she replies that she was just average. Tamiya tells her that her average performance made one girl think like she was about to die with her hit. Then she asks him when his basketball match was. He replies that it was about to begin very soon. Natsuki promises him that she will be there to cheer for him. She encourages him to do his very best. Tamiya finds this strange that he was feeling comfortable, even on the parents' visit day. The game begins, and the star of the game starts scoring points very fast. Tamiya knew that just one day's practice won't make him that good. Then he sees Natsuki, who is looking at him with hope. He feels guilty and decides to try properly. The star boy gets in front of him dribbling the ball, but he hits the ball and snatches it away from the star boy. Everyone was impressed to see that and tells Tamiya that it was a very nice defense. Tamiya could not even tell anyone that he did not even practice for a whole day. The match gets over and Tamiya's team had lost it by 4 points. But Natsuki tells him that she was still happy to see how he tries and gave them a fight. Tamiya apologizes her for forcing her to practice with him earlier. Natsuki asks him why he was saying sorry when he executed the move he learned. She tells him that he was pretty cool in the basketball court. Tamiya thanks her for being so kind to him. Then the next day, while they were in the club room, Tamiya was feeling like something was wrong. The thing was that Natsuki was wearing a jacket that day so he could not see her abs. It was for the first time she was doing that, otherwise rest of the time, she would just hung around him, which her abs exposed. Tamiya knew that it was actually good for his mental health, but still he had a strange feeling like he lost something valuable. As if something it taught was always there suddenly disappeared. It was bothering him very much. He knew that he cannot simply ask her why she was not showing off her abs that day. He needed to find another way. He asks her if it was just him, or she was also feeling like something had changed. Natsuki was happy to hear that and tells him that she went to a beauty parlor the previous day and it was a very popular place that was even in the TV. She was finally able to make an appointment. Tamiya did not care even a bit about that. He could not tell the difference even though she had a haircut just like any other woman. Then he asks her what else she feels had changed beside her haircut. Natsuki thinks and a lot and tells him that she also got a new band. Tamiya was kind of disappointed to hear that. Then Natsuki finally asks him if it was that she was wearing a jacket for the first time in front of her. Tamiya tells her that she finally got it. Natsuki tells him that there was a reason for that due to some circumstances, she does not want to take it off, or rather there was something that she did not want others to see. Tamiya wonders what secret she was hiding that she was even wearing a jacket in that hot weather. He wonders if she made a tattoo on her belly and was now being shy to show it. He tells her that she went all out in the act. Then Natsuki tells him that he was misunderstanding something. Then she finally tells him that there was a mosquito bite mark around her stomach and she was feeling embarrassed to show it to everyone. Tamiya thinks of it as a small deal. He tells her that no one would notice it if it was just an insect bite. Natsuki asks him if he really mean it. Tamiya assures her that it would be fine and tells her that it would be better to just relax. Natsuki then decides to take off her jacket, and she takes off her jacket and shows her abs again. And then Tamiya sees what she was talking about. She had 4 insect bite marks and 4 different abs. It was definitely catching people's eyes. Tamiya did not know what to say. The next day, Tamiya had actually got a gym ball and was trying to balance on it. But he fails and almost gets thrown out of the window. Right at that moment, Natsuki arrives and was shocked to see him in that condition. She immediately grabs him and brings his back from the window. Tamiya tells him that he thought for a moment that he was dead. He tells her that he got a balance ball and was playing with it. Natsuki asks him where did he got it from. Tamiya replies that one of his seniors from that club left it behind after they graduated. But there was no air inside, so he inflated it to play with it one last time before disposing it. But it ended up almost taking his life. Natsuki tells him that it would be a waste if he throws away such a nice balance ball, But Tamiya was sure about his decision and tells her that they were looking at the most dangerous tool in the whole world. It made him traumatized. Then Natsuki asks him if she can use it in that case. Natsuki gives her full permission to use it. She sits on it and feels like the balance ball was not that bad after all. Tamiya sees that she was pretty good on it and asks her how she was so good at it. Natsuki replies that it was because she used it at home regularly. Tamiya asks her to teach him how to use it. Natsuki replies that it was very easy and starts doing sit-ups on the balance ball. She could do various different types of exercises on it. She then tells him that she uses it to do different kinds of training. Tamiya changes his mind about the ball after hearing all that. She balances over it and assures Tamiya that with her amazing balance, she will never tip over. And then the ball gets in contact with the bottle and Natsuki loses the balance. She slips forward at where Tamiya was sitting in his head, gets on the middle of her thighs. Natsuki tells him sorry and gets down. She asks him if he was okay. With a smile and blood on his nose, Tamiya tells her that he was fine. Natsuki tells him that it was embarrassing for her that she bragged so much about balancing on the ball and then slipped right away herself. Tamiya was shocked to know that it was the embarrassing part for her. Then Natsuki grabs a textbook and starts asking Tamiya some history questions. Tamiya asked her why she was doing that all of a sudden. She replies that the exams were coming up. Before he was going to answer, Natsuki tells him that if he fails to answer rightly then, he will achieve to do 50 push-ups. It was harsh, but Tamiya still agrees to do it. He answers the question correctly, and now it was his turn to question and her to answer. Then Tamiya asks her a history question as well. Natsuki thinks for a while and then just gives up and starts doing the sit-ups. But she was having some problem keeping her legs on the ground while doing sits-up. So she asks Tamiya to hold her legs down while she was doing it. Tamiya holds her legs gladly and was very happy that he was getting to do that just because he asked a simple question. He was glad that he was getting to ask the morning each morning. They both were really close, that of a distance of a kiss. Tamiya just wanted to hurry up and get it done with. Natsuki was really tired now. Doing 50 sit-ups in a row was actually tough. Then he tells her that they will have to act like a dog if they fails to answer the question. Natsuki shows Tamiya an English word called insatiable and asks its meaning. Without much trouble, Tamiya actually answers it and he asks her a word meaning. Natsuki answers it incorrectly. Tamiya tells her that it was incorrect, and then she starts making wan sound. Tamiya feels like they were being too naughty. She was imitating a dog in a very naughty manner. He stops his dirty thoughts and then tells her to stop. Natsuki tells him that the next one to get it wrong will have to imitate a gorilla. Tamiya offers her to stop right there. It was time for summer vacation and Tamiya was very happy. Natsuki asks him if he has any plans to travel anywhere. Tamiya replies that he does not, as the thought of gaming until dawn and sleeping until dusk was heavenly for him. Natsuki tells him that she was going to do club activities for the whole vacation, and due to that, she won't be able to come there for a while. Tamiya realizes that he won't be able to see her and her beautiful abs all that time. He starts shedding tears unintentionally. The summer vacation begins, and Tamiya plays video games all night without worrying about going to school the next day. He was telling himself that it was happiness, but he was not really happy. He realizes that he cannot spend his whole month playing games like that. He used to think that playing games till morning would give him happiness, but now what happiness was for him was to see Natsuki in her tracksuit regularly. He was worried about why she was appearing in his head when thinking of happiness. He did not want to believe that she is the one who could make him happy. It was true that their heart just grew closer and closer, and his idea to kick her out was now gone. But still, he did not want to be so dependent on her. Then the next day, Natsuki comes to the club by mistake. She was heading back, but then she sees that the room was not locked. She opens the door to take a look, and it turns out that Tamiya was there inside. Natsuki asks him what brought him there. He replies that he just got bored staying alone at home, so he thought to visit the club every now and then. Then he tells her that he also bought ice creams and asks her if she wants one. But then Natsuki tells him to not come close to her. She was actually very sweaty. As she did not wipe it as she thought that he would not be there, she tells him to wait there and runs away. At that moment, Tamiya actually realizes where his real happiness was lying. Then later he sees Sonoya as well and asks her what she was doing during the summer holidays. She replies that she had some things to take care of as a librarian. She was going home as it was done. Then she asks Sonoya what was his reason for being there. Tamiya tells her that he has club activities, Sonoya asks him what he meant by that, as all he does in the club was just slacking off. Tamiya tells her that it does not matter to her, as he will be participating in the national tournament for slacking off. He goes back to his club room, and the notice is that the bell was ringing even during the holidays. Natsuki was there and tells him that it feels weird on meeting him during school holidays. She then asks him what he was going to eat for lunch. He replies that he just bought some bread at the convenience store. Then she tells him that she was planning to eat there with him. She had brought her bento. The idea of having lunch with Natsuki was bizarre for him. He thanks his luck for showing kindness to him. She opens her bento box, and it was looking very good and delicious. Natsuki tells him that she prepares her lunch every day. He also starts eating his bread. Natsuki asks him what kind of bread he was eating. He replies that it was a Japanese mugwort bread. Natsuki tells him that it was sounding and looking terrible, but Tamiya replies to her that it was not as bad as it looks. He asks her if she wants a bite. Natsuki asks him if she really can. Tamiya happily agrees. She even crawls to him like a dog and takes a bite from the bread. Tamiya's mind again imagines wildest things, as the whole thing was actually looking like she was eating something else instead of the bread from him. He wanted her to realize how erotic she looks all the time. She even took the bite from where he was eating. Then she tells him that he can also eat a little of her bento. Tamiya was very excited to taste her self-made bento. He asks her if he can take the fried chicken. She picks one piece of fried chick, but accidentally it drops on her lap. She tells him that she will pick another one for him, but Tamiya refuses and asks for that one. Natsuki tells him that it got dirty, but he tells her that they should not waste food and asks for that piece. Yes, that was his justification to do more fetish stuff.